And we're here to talk about a really interesting topic, very topical at this particular time with what's happening in the world around us. This is a live cast, so welcome to all of our audience who's joining us from across the world. We know there's been
Welcome.
a lot of interest in this topic. Please especially give a shout out to Kevin, who's joining us where it's 8 degrees at his 8 degrees
Yeah,
Fahrenheit
yeah.
at his place. So Kevin, you didn't have to take this with a sleeping bag on. You could,
No, 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 no. Just a long sleeve T-shirt. The heater hasn't turned off for the last few days, but yeah, we're getting through the snowpocalypse. It's not snowing actually; it's just cold.
ice
Yeah,
copolypse. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So Rupak, Kevin, we're here to talk about why we feel KVM's time has come, right? And we, have all been working on KVM for a long time now, but this is a particularly interesting point in time. It's interesting, technologies can mature for so long, and suddenly they break out and they become relevant 15 years after they've been in maturity. But before we begin and jump into the topic, I'd like to quickly introduce ourselves to the audience, for some of who may be joining us for the first time, and tell them a little bit about us. Kevin, I'd love to introduce you first. Could you tell the audience about yourself, please?
Hey, everybody, appreciate everybody being here. Like Srish mentioned, my name is Kevin Carter. I'm with Rackspace. I'm a product developer and product director here, focusing on our OpenStack public cloud. Well, OpenStack just to kind of in general. So this is it's topical, right? Because we're doing OpenStack things, and KVM is fundamental to our product offering and what we're going to be building.
And Rupak, do you want to tell the world about your background in hypervisors and virtualization?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. I've been working with various infrastructure technologies, started with VMware, their fantastic hypervisor, but then got introduced to KVM. And we have been doing work with KVM for the last 10 plus years now. All our customers are very happy with it. We are obviously going to talk a lot more about it with both OpenStack as well as now recently KubeVirt. So really glad to be here and share some of our experiences.
And finally, yours truly, my name is Suresh Raghuram. I'm one of the founders at Platform9. Rupak, myself, and a couple other engineers from VMware started Platform9 nearly 10 years ago. We met at VMware, so we weren't part of the KVM faithful. We were actually converts who converted into the religion
Oh,
nearly 10
nice.
years ago. And I can tell you, we have a lot of experience having worked on VMware and the management systems around VMware to KVM. There's a lot of pros and cons. There's a lot of changes in the technology, but one thing they both have in common is that I think they both are really very reliable hypervisors that you can run in confidence in the enterprise. Um, Kevin, in particular, is very relevant to this conversation because Rackspace is actually the company that created OpenStack, which was the leading KVM management technology outside of the public cloud providers. So there's a lot of interesting things here to talk about. So I want to talk a little bit about why we call this topic KVM's time has come. For those of you who follow these conversations happening in various social circles, you might have seen some of the updates in the last couple of months that is leading to renewed interest in KVM. And just some facts for people who may not be aware of this. Everybody's probably, Kevin, is already using KVM, whether they realize it or not, right? This is the hypervisor that everybody
Yeah,
uses, but doesn't always realize that they use it.
yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, it has been around for a long time. The slide captures that perfectly. I mean, it was introduced in kernel 2.6, right? Um, I mean, it's been a long time. People have been using KVM for a long time. Yeah. I think and if you're looking at like a lot of the hyperscalers, people are either using KVM, they're using Zen Server, maybe they're using Zen Open Source. The level 1 hypervisors of choice. Maybe there's people out there using Hyper-V. I'm not sure. But I mean, yeah, for a lot of these people are using KVM. I mean, there's a lot of fantastic products out there that are not necessarily related into those enterprise spaces that are also using KVM under the hood that are presenting, fantastic user experiences and capabilities around that. So yeah, it's KVM. It's been around.
Yeah, it's been around,
It's
and
it.
everybody in the
Yeah.
cloud is already using
Yeah.
it. And it's the hypervisor of choice in the cloud. And that's where a lot of usage is happening. And even derivatives, there's even in the private cloud, obviously, KVM was the leading hypervisor of choice in OpenStack. But even solutions like Nutanix AHV are derivatives of KVM. They're built around KVM as a core hypervisor technology. One perception that I hear a lot of, Rupak, is that KVM is somehow for Linux. And can you run Windows operating systems on KVM? Rupak, would you like to share some light on that?
Absolutely. Kevin spoke about how KVM came into existence 2006, 2007. And while its grounding are in Linux and the Linux subsystems, it has forever, to my knowledge, supported Windows. If you look at different cloud providers, Google as well as AWS, both use KVM, some flavor of KVM. I'm pretty sure they have customized it to their needs, but they use KVM, and Windows is one of the largest supported workloads on them. Windows has been around. It is completely supported. Even with our experience, we have customers who use KVM, OpenStack, as well as KubeVirt to run their Windows desktop applications on top of it. So it has been around. It is very well supported, including some of the para-virtualized devices and the associated driver. So that's all in there and very well supported.
Yeah,
And
if you're talking about just like KVM flexibility, right? Like, I mean, you just talking about Windows. Over the weekend, just because I'm a nerd, I was running Haiku OS on my KVM infrastructure, just here at my house, which is over this shoulder. But which is BOS, right? I mean, it's a ancient operating system, but I was running it in KVM because I was tinkering with it. It's amazing, right, what you can do with KVM, right? And everybody knows this, right? I'm not the only tinkerer, but and you've seen huge companies stand up and tinker with KVM, like SmartOS, porting KVM over into Solaris. KVM is it's flexible. It's an incredible tool that enables people to do incredible things with it.
Yeah, specifically because it's part of the Linux kernel. So it is ubiquitous. It's what everyone is using it. While we use tools like LibVirt and QEMU to run KVM, there are companies who are using KVM directly as well. As an example, AWS is using something like Firecracker, which is
I was about to mention
using KVM to create lightweight virtual machines. So it's, as I said, it's ubiquitous. It's very, very lightweight. And there are so many applications it's being used for. People don't even know about it.
Yeah, it's cool. It enables people to do amazing things, whether they know it or not. It's KVM under the hood.
And Kevin, one of the things that I think a lot of people know about Rackspace is that you're the company that created OpenStack. But I've learned over the years that you also have a very large VMware practice. I knew you as a company that created OpenStack, but you also have a very large VMware practice. So you actually have customers who are using your Rackspace and Rackspace infrastructure and solutions to run VMware environments as well as KVM-based environments. So you actually have an interesting vantage point where you support customers with more than one hypervisor, and you can speak well to the pros and cons. Could you talk to us a little bit about the past and the present of KVM? And then one of the reasons we titled this session was KVM's time has come, especially given some of the recent developments in the last couple of months. Why do you think KVM's time has come now? Would you like to share some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so just to be perfectly clear, Rackspace, we founded, we helped co-found OpenStack, and the community created it, right? We all bonded together and built this amazing thing that Rackspace had that first mover, first step in. And so, yeah, KVM has a storied history at Rackspace, both in acceptance and rejection. Our public cloud was largely built on Zen, and then later Zen Server. So not using KVM, but our private cloud has always been KVM. So we've used KVM a lot. We've evaluated KVM a lot. We saw when KVM was not at its infancy, but when it was there, and maybe it was not. Maybe Zen Server was the right choice at that time for the technology at that time, running those different types of workloads. But we evaluated it then, made the choice to use some Zen Server at that point. But we're now going into building out our version 2 of our public cloud, and that will all be KVM. So yeah, it's a long history of both acceptance and rejection. So we're like we can look at it, we can articulate why it's great, and then we can also say maybe it wasn't as good as what it should have been at that point, but and talk about the reasons why we may not have chosen it. But anyways, yes. So why has KVM's time come? I mean, like I just mentioned, we're building a new public cloud, and we're doing it with KVM. So we're all in on the whole KVM front.
And can you share, Kevin, for the audience that cares, you yourself have been in the position of having made the choice not to use KVM nearly 12 years ago when the first generation of your OpenStack public cloud was built. And you chose Zen, which at the time I think was more mature, and CloudStack at the time was predominantly using Zen. Even Amazon, AWS, I think was using Zen before they switched to KVM, right?
I believe that is correct. I don't have
could you speak
internal knowledge
a little bit to the
yeah,
we have an outside knowledge of some of these things. So could you speak a little bit to what drove that decision to not use KVM like nearly 12 years ago? And as you have been thinking about the next generation of OpenStack public cloud today and the last year, what are some of the factors that led you to have confidence that this should be built on KVM? And why should you build on KVM?
You know what? It's a good question. I wasn't in the room when those decisions were made for our public cloud. If I was recalling back what it was, that drove some of those decisions, 10, 12 years ago, I think it largely was centered around performance, and specifically performance around like Windows type workloads. But I think that is all solved, right? And while KVM has always supported, well, maybe not always, maybe I'm speaking too definitively, but what KVM has supported Windows for a very long time, maybe the performance wasn't as good or the network throughput wasn't as good, but that's not true today. Like everything is as good, if not better today than it was. Well, it's arguably better than it was way back then, but it is as good as anything else. And then take it a step further is the integrations, the community support around it is far better. What we can do with it today. When we're talking about capabilities, right? AI is the big buzzword of the day, but that's like getting devices into your virtual machine, pass through, thinking about like grid capabilities, like with what NVIDIA is offering, thinking about a lot of these different situations that allow SRIOV is another one. AMD is offering, through all of their connected devices. We can address all of that workload inside of our virtual machines or virtual appliances or any of that other jazz. And KVM gives us that capability. And it's not only is KVM, a centerpiece to that, it's flexible. So I think what's driving that conversation of why we're using KVM for our future stuff is because it's really the clear winner. And actually it's the open source choice, right? I think Zen Server is open source now. So, it's not to take away from its, contributions to the community, but KVM's been there and it's going to be there. So,
Rupak, on that comment about performance, I know you were involved, you and some of your team was involved in deployment with a regional cloud provider that has these software-defined networks. They're like a network services provider last year, and where you had some really interesting performance results. They were replacing a Zen-based CloudStack environment, I think, with a KVM-based solution, and you saw some really interesting performance numbers. Could you speak a little bit to maybe this issue about where the state of alternative hypervisors was 10, 12 years ago? And by the way, this is something you looked into when we were starting Platform9, and how is that today, and based on and some of the data that you have around this.
Let me share our journey and some of the decisions that we made. This probably goes back to what Kevin was also alluding to. When we started, Zen was very popular because of its roots in para-virtualization, which was the state-of-art technology perhaps 12 to 15 years ago. But when AMD and Intel, both of them came out with virtualization in CPU, it really changed everything. And it simplified the architecture to quite a bit. And that's when KVM actually really took off. And we were lucky when we started. KVM was already on the path to maturity, and we saw that we should pick that as the technology. Obviously, it was already part of the Linux kernel, so that meant a lot of community support, patches, fixes, support for different devices. Kevin already spoke about some of them. So that was one of the big reasons we chose KVM, and we were glad we did because it really worked out for us with various customers, as I mentioned, running Linux, obviously, but not only Linux, but Windows. We have customers still running Windows, really old version of Windows, believe it or not, it's still running on those hypervisors. In addition to that, Sirish, you spoke about performance. So we had the opportunity to work with what we call as a network service provider. They provide services like SD-WAN, firewall, and so on and so forth. I don't even know the 10, 20 different services that they provide. But all of them have to do with really high performance, latency sensitive workloads, because firewall, as you can imagine, it's in the path of your network traffic. It better do it fast. It better analyze the traffic fast. And so what you needed was not only just virtualization, but the capability with these KVM virtual machines to use the devices on their servers. And we were able to give them the pass-through. In this case, it was SRIOV, and there are some application which was using DPDK. So we were able to support both of them on the same management infrastructure. And so this particular customer had, if I'm guessing it right, if I remember it right, about 25 data centers across the world. Each data center have a handful of the servers, and depending on the location, they can have many, many more. And they wanted to run these latency sensitive SD-WAN and other applications. And when we did the testing, compared to their old system, which was, I believe it was CloudStack based upon Zen, the performance was at least twice as better. Now it has to do with obviously using a 10-year-old system with something new, which with the pass-throughs, as well as some of the new VirtIO drivers that they have for some other applications. I think in all those SRIV, VirtIO, as well as DPDK, it outperformed all the existing deployments that they have. And they were surprised, and to be honest, we were also surprised about that, and they were very happy with taking this on.
Yeah, it's great to hear that. And by performance specifically on the existing on the
network
same hardware,
throughput specifically. Right? Yeah, throughput as well as latency both, because they are sensitive to both of them.
Okay.
I mean, that tracks too. I mean, when we're talking about like just general performance numbers, a lot of the white papers that Red Hat have published is, like some of the performance metrics and capabilities you can get out of that, those setups and those integrations, right? Whether you're talking about SRIOV or NUMA-aware scheduling, it's pretty legit. Oh, yes. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Which actually brings us, Rupak, to the next topic, which is I think this particular deployment that happened last year was using, if I remember correctly, you said it was using KubeVirt with Kubernetes as the management platform. That's as opposed to OpenStack. So there's obviously more than one way of managing KVM today. Two of the leading solutions are in the open source community are OpenStack and KubeVirt. There are also proprietary alternatives. For example, Nutanix AHV is one, and there may be other options as well that wrap around KVM but provide like a proprietary management system around it, right? But for today's conversation, let's keep the conversation focused on the leading open source technologies which have broad community adoption and contributions, right? So Rupa, could you tell us a little bit about, if I were a user looking at KVM with fresh eyes because of what's happening with VMware, et cetera, what are the pros and cons of these two different approaches? When would you consider one versus the other? And does it depend on my skill set? Does it depend on my use case? What does it depend on, right? Could you talk to me as a user through this?
Yeah, there are many different considerations. So let's talk about deployment first, and then I will talk about the actual audience who may be using it. If you look at KubeVirt, it's really based upon Kubernetes as the orchestration system. So as you can imagine, it has all the Kubernetism in it. So you have to deal with YAML files. It tries to reuse some of the concept that Kubernetes has, things like replica set and services and so on and so forth. So it's a different world, but it is also very lightweight. In the example that I just spoke about, where we had the network service provider in 2025 locations around the world, they had some deployments which were 50 to 100 servers, but they had some deployment where they only had 2 servers to 3 servers in each locations, because these were remote locations. They didn't have that many customers in those locations. So obviously their compute and network capacity was limited. And for that use case, not that OpenStack cannot be used in those. For that use case, they found KubeVirt to be this solution because it was lightweight, as well as they had some workloads which were also going to be containerized in future. So that's really the decision that you need to make. You want something lightweight with the possibility of moving to containers which are running on bare metal. That's where KubeVirt is very interesting.
And Rupak, just to
Versus
pause you
OpenStack,
for a moment,
yeah, go ahead.
there may be people who actually understand KubeVirt and how it pertains to KVM management, but a lot of people may also think Kubernetes is something you only use with containers. So could you tell us a little bit about how real is this KVM management capability with KubeVirt? What led to its creation? When does it make sense? And what are some of the does it have some of the key capabilities that people look for when it comes to being able to manage KVM?
Absolutely. So think about KVM as the underlying hypervisor, which lets you run virtual machines. And then you have these management systems. OpenStack is one, KubeVirt is one, Red Hat have their own proprietary ones as well. So sort of there are many management systems so that you can manage a large number of them. So that's what KVM is. Now, what KubeVirt has done is they've taken Kubernetes, which is primarily used for container management, so that you can create containers, delete containers. You can create load balancers, like they call it service. On top of that, you can do scale out by replicating the same one multiple times. But instead of containers, what KubeVirt has done is they have added virtual machine as a workload as part of the same APIs or similar APIs. Now, what it lets you do is, in the same environment, you can run containers as well as you can run virtual machines. And the goal is that they can talk to each other. So in the example that I was talking about, imagine they have a SD-WAN appliance, which is from one of the vendors, which is virtualized on KVM. You can run the same virtual machine in OpenStack. You can run the same virtual machine in KubeVirt. There is absolutely no difference. In addition to that, let's say the same vendor has a private 5G offering, which is all containerized. Now they can run that offering side by side in containers on the same bare metal machines. So that's the advantage of using something like KubeVirt. But it does mean that you're familiar with Kubernetes and how it works. So that's really one of the benefit as well as drawback with KubeVirt. People who are not familiar with KubeVirt, Kubernetes, they will find KubeVirt to be a little bit strange. But in terms of the functionality, it offers almost the same thing. We spoke about things like SRIOV, GPTK, GPU pass-through. We have a customer who's actually using TPUs because they have some sensitive data in these edge locations, and they wanted to protect it. And KubeVirt, thanks to KVM, provides that. So that's really where KubeVirt comes in. On the other hand, OpenStack is really strong. They have years of experience running as public cloud, Kevin can probably talk for hours on that subject, as well as data centers. They're pretty strong with that. Multi-tenancy is pretty strong with OpenStack, versus KubeVirt is primarily a single tenant system. Can you do multi-tenancy? Yes, you can, but it is much more natural with something like OpenStack. If you want to have virtual machines with many networks, OpenStack is probably a better way. KubeVirt also provides something similar, but it is little unnatural. But at the end of the day, really you have to pick which one you are more comfortable with. If you are looking forward to going cloud native, I would say KubeVirt is the right way. If you want to stay with something which is tried and tested, I have been there for a long time, building a IaaS solution, then OpenStack is really the right solution. Kevin, would like to hear from you. I'm pretty sure you have opinions on the subject, having seen both of them.
Especially as a service provider, Kevin, I'd imagine multi-tenancy is really important. Network isolation and network software-defined networking is really important, right? And you mentioned you're building your next generation public cloud offering using OpenStack. So talk to us about how did you evaluate these pros and cons?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Rupak nailed it, quite frankly. I don't know how much more I need to add to, or color I need to add to that. Mostly, I mean, if we're looking at KubeVirt, it's or KubeVirt. Anyway, we're looking at KubeVirt. We're talking about K-native APIs, workloads, etc., like Rupak mentioned, and being able to bring in people, into that ecosystem. It's about trust, right? And if you're building out your Kubernetes environment and you trust your developers to do the thing, and you want them to run, you obviously you can do multi-tenants, and there's RBAC, and there's actually OpenShift has some incredible solutions around creating that multi-tenancy. So like definitely there are options, but if it is in a less trust like environment, I think leading into something like an OpenStack or something that does provide that managerial layer on top is probably better. At least from our opinion, right? Because we want to be able to onboard people into our environment. We want to let you have resources. We want you to go wild, and we want to let you, be able to build out your IT future in our cloud space. But we don't want you to be, have to worry about what someone else is doing. And so, having OpenStack with an SDN, with KVM, with all of these different solutions creates those guardrails. So, that it's about trust. And as we're onboarding people into our public cloud, well, we don't trust them. So we trust them to use the resources, but we don't trust them to have access to the managerial interfaces that like a KubeVirt would provide.
Or rather, you require that your one customer A shouldn't have to trust other customers who are on your platform, right?
100%. Yes.
That's really the guidance. So when you're in a shared environment and you are potentially sharing underlying infrastructure with other unknown users, that's when you assume a zero trust kind of environment, and that's where you'd use something like OpenStack for its more robust network isolation, software-defined network capabilities. That works more for traditional, like a classical IaaS solution.
Correct.
Can we switch gears and say? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I would say that, I'm speaking from the public cloud point of view, but when we're talking about the private cloud point of view, the trust scenario changes a lot. And I actually don't think it's KubeVirt or OpenStack. I think it, quite frankly, is because
I was actually going to go, Kevin, that's exactly where I was going to go. So if you're a cloud services provider where you want to host, a shared environment and possibly be a service provider of a cloud, or you're a large enterprise that is acting as a service provider within the enterprise, you may need these more robust controls to say that tenant A doesn't need to actually control or know about tenant B and other tenants. They can coexist securely. Yeah. But if you don't have that requirement, right, then how would you make some of the decisions and the pros and cons? So Rupa, coming back to you, let's say that I go all the way from a large scale shared environment to a very small scale edge environment, right? How would you compare the pros and cons of these two technologies for edge deployments? Define edge, right? Like we're talking about distributed sites with potentially 1 to 10, maybe 15 servers at most in each site?
Frankly, both of them would work, and we have had customers who are using one versus another. Let me give you a couple of examples. So we have one customer who is using 2 servers in each location with an OpenStack, which is distributed. Now, I know not a whole lot of vendors do it. We have done it, but it just goes to show the flexibility of OpenStack that can work in this environment where these hypervisors are connected to a central location where the control plane of OpenStack is. Now, if you're talking about cases where these edge locations may be sometimes connected, sometimes disconnected, then I would suggest something like KubeVirt is much more lightweight because of the converged architecture where Kubernetes can, the control plane can also run the workloads. So then you can have a completely isolated 2-node, 3 node specifically cluster, and that can be completely disconnected from the whole world. And that, in my opinion, would be a better solution. But it really comes down to, as I said, your familiarity with the technology and where you want to take your project.
And let's say that I'm in neither extreme, right? So neither the edge. So I heard you on the edge in terms of saying that if you have small footprint and you're trying to be completely isolated or self-contained, then Kubernetes and KubeVirt can be more simpler to deploy and operate in those kinds of environments than having to deploy and manage it with an OpenStack control plane. Obviously, at Platform9, you simplify that by running the SaaS control plane, so users don't have to deal with that on those edge sites. But people who are not using the Platform9's OpenStack solution, it's not easy to run the OpenStack controller in these edge sites, right? So that's where KubeVirt has a simplicity advantage. But if you exclude that, if you leave out the edge scenario or the large cloud service provider to the happy medium, right, which is the classical VMware enterprise persona, right? I've been at Acme Corp. I'm a VMware administrator that has been running vSphere for a number of years. And the things that I care about are, it's really reliable. It just works. It supports some of the core features that an IT operations person needs to worry about, such as, high availability, live migration, vMotion, interoperability with a variety of storage and network devices, and backup and recovery. How then, for me as that VMware administrator, how would you guide me on the choices of these two technologies?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it and would love to hear from Kevin as well. So all the functionalities that you spoke about, the middle ground, the data centers, where you have hundreds of servers, 10 to hundreds of servers, really both of them are good choices. Now, there are some differences. With both those technologies, you get networking providers because, frankly, if you look at Kubernetes, there are various options, L3 level networking, L2 level networking. L3 is more popular. With OpenStack, you have OVS and standard L2 technologies. You also have choices of other vendors who might be supporting it. On the backup and storage, very similarly, you have choices there. But in terms of maturity, I would say that OpenStack is ahead because it has been in the market for a really long time. And there are many vendors who are supporting it. KubeVirt is upcoming, lightweight. There are some companies who are supporting it. But overall, if you are making decisions based upon the ecosystem, I would say OpenStack is little ahead in that game, as I said, because of the maturity in the market. Kevin, thoughts on that?
I would agree. My sign behind me also agrees. So when we're talking about maturity of the overall platform, I think OpenStack is more mature. I think you have more options, and the project space within OpenStack gives you a lot of fantastic capabilities. When we're talking about backups, we're talking about we're talking about KVM right now, but like live migration, it's been alive and well in OpenStack for a very long time. Network integration is, there have been so many SDN solutions inside of OpenStack, I would fail to count them because of it's there. It's an integration point. And then, like I said, you have the project space on top of that, right? Whether you want to use third-party appliance for your backup systems, like you have that option, you can do that. If you want to build your own, you can do that. If you want to use the project space inside of OpenStack, like Freezer, you can do that. Like it's a choose your own adventure in a lot of the stuff that you can do with OpenStack, which allows you to build that robust functional environment. So yeah, I wouldn't, but yeah, I go back to saying that, I don't actually think it's one or the other. I actually, quite frankly, I think you're running both of them side by side, right? If you're thinking about it historically or traditionally, right, you've got OpenStack as an IaaS solution. You run Ironic, right, and do some bare metal things. And so within the bare metal environment, you could deploy your Kubernetes and then run KubeVirt inside of that, right? So you have bare metal managed by OpenStack as an IaaS solution, running bare metal Kubernetes, giving developers the freedom to build their application the way that they need to, which is containers or Virt. And at the under the hood, I've got OpenStack providing virtual machines. Well, maybe that's where you put your control plane for your legacy apps, whatever. And then you put your cloud native apps into your cloud native space. And if you need to bridge that gap with KubeVirt, you do it. And then like when you do it, when you start looking into like what you can do with your SDN solutions, Kubernetes, or Rupa talked about a lot of the different SDN solutions that Kubernetes already supports, but there's a lot of commonality between what you can do inside of Kubernetes and what you can do in OpenStack. And so if you can figure out a way to marry those, you really could use both simultaneously within the same functional environment without having to go into any kind of nested layers or deeper. So like, I think when you're thinking about it, going back to your question, Suresh, about how do I, propose this as a solution for that middle market, that environment where they just need it to work. It's a pillar of their infrastructure. It needs to be rock solid. I'm going to say OpenStack, but I also am going to say OpenStack gives you the ability to choose your own adventure.
Yeah, especially for a user who, I think the people who are already deeply committed to Kubernetes, you know who you are, right? So then you know about KubeVirt, right? Like where your strategic direction is towards containerization, app modernization,
Sure.
becoming more cloud native. You know who you are, and KubeVirt may be a good choice for you because you're so committed to that path, right? And you may have made a lot of progress on that path. But if you're not in that subset, I would say that's a special group. If you're not in that subset, then I would say OpenStack is maybe the generally, for someone who's coming from that classical VMware-like persona, is looking at Nutanix AHV, but may have reservations about hyper-converged architecture, is actually considering Hyper-V. We haven't talked about Hyper-V, but
Hyper-V is a
lot
fantastic hypervisor.
Yeah, Hyper-V's been there, but the reality is that for that kind of persona, OpenStack is possibly the better choice, right? Like, and it has all the classical features, the core feature set that you kind of expect from an enterprise-grade platform. Just plugging two solutions teams, Rackspace and Platform9 are both doing a lot of work, including together in these in this space.
We are.
We have a close partnership. There's a next generation OpenStack cloud that Rackspace is going to be announcing and making available soon. We're incredibly excited about that. We use that at Platform9 ourselves, actually, and we love it. We've actually repatriated a lot of workloads from Amazon into that cloud, and I can speak to you as a user saying it just works. And we are using the old version that's running on Zen, and we can't wait to get this next generation version.
Soon.
That's going to be
Coming
so much newer and better.
Yeah.
And Platform9, we make OpenStack easier than anybody knows. One of the most common objections to OpenStack is like, oh, but I can't go hire 100 OpenStack engineers to go run this. I'm really interested in it, but I don't have Linux ninjas. I can't go hire like 100 engineers. Well, you don't need 100 engineers to run this. It's as simple as SaaS. People can get up and running. We have demo videos on our YouTube channel, but go visit our website and reach out to one of our architects to talk about OpenStack. We make it drop dead simple. We make it incredibly efficient to run low footprint environments, including at the edge site where you can run like as little as one server in the edge to, with a control plane running as SaaS. We also offer a KubeVirt product that is also in use, and that's where some of the performance numbers that Rupak was sharing about, we ourselves were blown away by some of the performance numbers we saw on where the service providers using CloudStack. and our SaaS delivery model means that we make it really simple and easy to use. So with that said, I want to end on one final topic, right? For the people who are out there on the fence looking for an alternative or a next generation cloud, hypervisor, this is really in the private cloud context, right? Because of what's happened with VMware, because of the cost of cloud, right? Some of these people have actually tried to go to the cloud and they've realized the cost economics ain't
It's a
what
big
it
thing.
seemed.
Oh yeah.
The numbers don't always make sense. For those people and who are now worried about how do they move forward from where they have what they have, and they're considering alternatives like AHV or Hyper-V or Proxmox or others, what would your parting thoughts be before we wrap this session on why KVM, why now? Kevin, you first, and then Rupak.
I think you should take a longer look at KVM. The solutions out there are numerous, right? I'm going to say go OpenStack, right? Come to the OpenStack side. And historically people are going to say, OpenStack is hard. And I'll agree with you, it was. It's not. So it's just you just give a nice long spiel about why you're actually there as a partner to be able to manage these environments for people if they don't want to do it themselves. But like the solutions out there for running OpenStack are numerous and are robust. If you want to run, community-based distribution of OpenStack using Cola, great. You want to use OpenStack Ansible, even better. Like you want to use something else that you have, great. There's so many choice out there, and there is some learning that you have to do to get up to speed on some of these solutions. But the reality is that once you're up to speed with the solutions, a lot of them just work, and you're going to have a really good experience with that. That said, if you don't want to use OpenStack, you want to use something else. You want to use a Proxmox as an unraid, something along those lines. KVM is here to help you under the hood. You don't know it's there. Like Proxmox is presenting you a UI. Like under the hood, you got some KVM. Unraid, same thing. Like the solutions are there that can help you achieve your goals. And KVM is the under that thing that we are talking about, that we're excited about, that Red Hat has been working on for almost 20 years. It's just there. It just works, and it solves a lot of problems. And so you can choose to use KVM in new and exciting ways. Like actually, Rupak, you mentioned Firecracker earlier. We have Kata containers. Like there's so many options that are under the hood is all KVM. So KVM is solving your problems, whether you know it or not. And I think when people are looking at it like I'm so ingrained in the ESX world, I think that's just them getting in their own way, maybe not wanting to change. It's not a matter of it can't solve your problem. In fact, the problem is already solved. You just got to kind of choose your own adventure.
And Rupak, your parting comments on why now and why look at KVM?
Everything that Kevin said, but I will go even a step further. I think it's more than KVM. KVM represents an open source technology which is mature, used by millions. I think there is an ecosystem of open source software, and companies like Platform9, Rackspace, all of us are part of it. We support OpenStack, we support KubeVirt, and these are really good systems. It will give you choice in terms of vendors. It will give you the maturity. We all spoke about KVM and numerous technologies that are around there. But if I am a administrator, DevOps engineer, sitting at looking at alternatives, I would look at open source technologies, open source management systems, and then pick a vendor. And in this world, we have many of them providing, capabilities on top of these open source systems, and it will make your life easier because then you will have choice of moving away if need be.
That's actually a fantastic point. Actually, the whole once you just because you're with a vendor right now doesn't mean you're married to them forever. I mean, sure, I would love you come to Rackspace Private Cloud and us sell you a cloud and we'll run it for the next 100 years. That's wonderful. But at the same time, if you have the people and you want to just manage it yourself, this is all open source. Like we're making the management of it easy for you. But again, you can choose. You can choose to do exactly what we're doing. And in fact, we'll give you the keys to do it.
And
Absolutely. And
maybe
this-
that's a really good way to summarize, right? Like we've seen in the last couple of months with what's happened with VMware is an incredible act of hostage taking, right? The VMware install base has just been held hostage in a way that a lot of people said it wouldn't happen, this time would be different. But you go look at how some of these VMware cloud service providers have been treated. I just don't see something like that ever being possible in the open source ecosystem. And I think open source is your best hedge because it gives you strategic freedom and flexibility. And the leading open source hypervisor, KVM, also happens to be the leading hypervisor in the world. It's actually running at larger scale because of its use in the cloud. It's running at larger scale than even VMware ESX. And most people don't realize that. They're actually using this, and they can actually gain a lot more control on their own destiny by moving to KVM. So that would be my plug on why you need to consider KVM. I really enjoyed the conversation. Kevin, Rupak, such a pleasure having you. And for those of you who joined us, thank you for joining us. Please stay in touch. You can follow our newsletter, sign up for our newsletter. The link was shared a short while earlier. Get in touch with Rackspace, get in touch with Platform9. Kevin is at Cloud Null on the thing that was previously called Twitter. I used to be on Twitter, but I refuse to be a part of it anymore. But you can find me on LinkedIn. Really enjoyed.
I'm Cloud Null on LinkedIn too. I'm Cloud Null everywhere.
We really enjoy the conversation, and we hope to hear from you. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Bye now.